Well, hi there, it's Matthew Blades, and welcome to Learn from People Who Lived It. We're doing something different where we're taking some of our most talked about episodes and turning them into shorts, 15 minutes or less, so that if you're a busy person, you can still get a gist for what's gone on in these folks' lives and how they were able to overcome. That's the most important part. In today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about abuse, domestic violence to be exact. I remember the first time that I walked into the Sojourner Center, which is a domestic violence shelter here in Phoenix, to see what it was all about, and being so impressed by the level of love and care that this center was offering women who were in really rough situations. Heather was in one of those really rough situations once upon a time, and she's here to share that story today, how it started, how it went, and how it's going right now. So let's jump right in. But before we do, please let me remind you that ASI-AV.com, this is that audiovisual company that has been with me since the very beginning, is still a large part of what we're doing around here. If you're in the IT department or you're in charge of build outs, whether that's corporate or classroom or whatever it is that you are building and you need audiovisual equipment, I'm asking you to consider ASI-AV.com. They've got offices in Minnesota and in Arizona, and they are a woman-owned audiovisual company. Thank you very much for listening. Let's jump off into today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
My name is Heather, and I am 45 years old.
What story are you here to share?
I guess the story I'm here to tell today is about my perseverance, my struggles through addiction, and where I'm at today.
Who do you hope hears this?
Any woman or man who is struggling with depression, anxiety, grief, or loss.
She was 18 years old when she went to rehab for the very first time. Her mom died when she was 21. And she's here today to talk about the hardest, or the person that was the hardest to forgive. And I think you will be impressed by her answer. Joy DeSmit is alongside Heather. And Heather, welcome to our podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Boy, I mean, and I just scratched the surface there because your life is one of lots of colors. And you said to me in one of our very first notes, and Troy, I had not shared this with you yet, but she said to me in one of her notes, she said, like, I don't know how many years ago, she said, I couldn't string a sentence together. And now you are somebody who is not only been married for 6 years or with the same guy for 6 years and married for the last 3, but man, you're a leader in your community. And now you're helping the same group of people that, you once were a part of.
Absolutely.
And so you're really somebody who's gone into this thing and come out the other side with this incredible energy. And I think that's what brought you to this party here, because you feel compelled to share your story, don't you?
I do. It wasn't until I was about 11 or 12 when my mom's longtime boyfriend that I witnessed abuse. Verbal, emotional, physical. I never saw him hit her, but I did witness my mom breaking a glass table, like a round tabletop, over his head.
I like to ask, as long as we can, in the story, how do you think those things played out in your adult years, in your adult relationships with men that you tried to get with relationships that you would try to form, be it a relationship at work or a relationship for, intimacy? How did the first few years of your life impact you there?
Very insecure. Like, I was 15 when I met my oldest son's dad. I had my son at 16, and I thought that was going to be my freedom, right? Like, nobody can tell me what to do. I'm grown, I can do what I want. And, so I thought at the time, madly in love with this kid, right? He's 6 months younger than me. So I think he was 15 at the time. So it was not like, so my standards were not very high.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and doesn't this seem like a great place to talk about generational cycles? It really does. It's screaming at me right now because it's your entire, like, as you're coming up, Heather, right? Like your entire world is this. Every man in your life is just repeating behavior,
Right.
repeating behavior. It's like you could write the script and they're all going to do it. And so, Troy, I know that you may not have all the answers, but you have some. How do you break a generational cycle like that?
Well, first thing I think is that you have to become aware of it, and it takes time for that to develop until you can eventually take a look at your life and look back at your life and see the patterns. And then once the pain or the realization occurs to you about that awareness, then you can go back and you can work through the meanings you've made about your life and the stories that you've told yourself for those past years. And then learn about your parents and where they came from and the challenges and issues that they've dealt with. Once you can do that, then you can start taking a look at the patterns and really understand what place you're making decisions from in the men that you're choosing to live with, to be with.
I always told myself I would never let a man hit me. I'm never going to do this. I'm never, I always said I'm never. And then I let this one man do it one time and then it escalated. Push came to shove came to a slap. Then it was closed fist. And then it was breaking lamps and irons over my head. By the hands of this man, I should be dead 3 times, And I was sassy, right? I was like, I've got big brothers that, made me tough. So I would push it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to pretend that I did not push his buttons because I did. So I take ownership of my mouth. In hindsight now, it's like no man has any right to put their hands on a woman, no matter, walk away, right? The bigger thing would be you need to be man enough or woman enough to walk away. And we were both immature, young, first loves.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think, don't you guys agree, it plays into everything you saw as a child? So much of that behavior was normalized for you.
Right.
It's really important that people cue into that part of your story. So much of what you saw as a kid normalized so many things for you and so of course you have a tolerance built up. Of course your patience is stronger. You've been forced to deal with this part all your life.
Like my husband now, he's amazing. He would never think about putting his hands on me, and I'm quick with the tongue, right? So I have to catch myself because I can be pretty mean with my words, like saying the F word or F you. And, and he's like, why are you talking? I'm like, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? But I can say I'm sorry today, before I wouldn't be able to see any of that in myself. But I've come so far. Like I think it's a blessing how we met, in God's timing and somebody who truly cares about me, somebody who has my back, somebody who is not jealous or insecure to where he's kind of trying to dictate what I can and cannot do, what I can and can't wear, or, and that's how it was with other relationships. Like you're wearing that, back in the day when I was cute and skinny, so.
Well, and what I always wonder too is, when you get into a pretty, let's call it normal relationship for the sake of a lack of a better word, right? Were there ever times where you kind of almost missed the drama or you found yourself wanting to poke the bear to stir it up just a little bit because to get back into that feeling? Yeah. Cause that's important to talk about, right? That happens.
Yep. And with this relationship, I was single for 5 whole years before I met my husband. So like I had a really good chance and time to get to know me, to get to know what I liked, to get to know what intimacy without drugs was, to get to know what somebody genuinely doing something for me and not wanting anything in return, right? Like I'm so suspicious, back in my day, I'd be very suspicious. If you were nice to me, you wanted something, not just because you're a kind person and you're doing it with no expectation. In my mind,
So you assumed the kind of the manipulative behavior of a man of a man if they were doing something nice for you, you assumed automatically that it was a manipulative behavior. Yep. Yeah,
I was trained that way,
Yeah,
and it was told to me by Craig, like, oh, he's doing something nice for me just to be doing something nice. No, he wants something from you. So that brings me back to a situation. And we were still using at this point. I was just done with, right? Like, I left him so many times. And one of the last times I left him, he came to my sister's house and she said, Heather, if you leave with him, I will never help you again. And she was true to her word, because I left with him and he called her and he's like, haha, bitch, I won. I don't even want her, but you can't have her. You know what I mean? And that was with my own sister. He was so manipulative and so controlling that he made it to where my family didn't want anything to do with me because they could not stand the fights between us. And, Shannon, who got away from that, she was, young when she married, but she married an amazing man who kind of took her out of that. And then she did everything that she could to try to get me out of that as well. And so, like, she was my strong support, and he made it a point to where I didn't have that.
The thing that occurs to me is what you said earlier, Heather, around how you had said the boundary. Nobody's going to beat me up. I'm not going to allow that. So you had this boundary that you established with yourself, and how nobody is going to hurt me. Nobody's going to hit me. Similar to the way, you'd experienced in your past. And yet when it happens, it's a shock to the system. And I think it's really important that, it sounds like later on you've established those boundaries, but then also the importance of how we enforce those boundaries and what enforcing boundaries really means. Because when we're in an abusive relationship, the odds of the man that you were with changing with you is almost nil or nothing. And so truly the only way in that type of a situation for you to have enforced that boundary that you established would have been to leave that relationship.
Yeah.
And what dawns on me is the stories we tell ourselves about how, when we're young and we fall in love and we think it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
Or we meet a person and we put a label on them, like, she's my soulmate. She's my twin flame. She's the love of my life. All of these things that we say or make these labels of really prohibit us from enforcing those boundaries that, now I have to work harder not to please him. How do I do that? So now it becomes a situation where we're working to please them and we're walking on eggshells to not upset them, to not get hurt.
All right. We're here. We're on the other side of a lot of noise. And now you have an opportunity to, say something either to yourself or to somebody who's listening to this and saying, okay, I'm in a similar situation. What do they need to hear to walk away? What do you know they need to hear to walk away?
Oh gosh. Know that is not love. Like, no matter how, and abusers are manipulative. They're going to pull at your heartstrings. They're going to lie to you. They're going to threaten their own lives, threaten your family. Leave. You've got to cut that tie. So, like, I had to pray, I remember praying, like, please, Lord, give me the strength to just cut the ties with this person. And I finally was able to, just say enough is enough, but you can't go back. You know what I mean? You gotta, and that's the hard part, is because these people are so manipulative and they will do anything and say anything, but it's not love. It is not love. It's abuse, and love don't hurt.
Yeah. The last question that I want to ask you is about where you are now in your life. You mentioned to me in an email that you're the kind of woman other women look up to now. So tell me a little bit about that story.
So yeah, now I work at Arizona Women's Recovery Center. Before that, so I got my education. I went to college, you know what I mean? I was working in the behavioral health field for 7 years at LifeWell working with the SMI population after I got my peer support training, after I went, all the things. So now I work for an amazing company that saved my life, Arizona Women's Recovery Center. When I interview these women before they come in, they're like, we get to share our little bits of our stories where we came from and just kind of have that conversation. And, they're like, I'm proud of you. That's what I want. I want what you have, and I'm like, me? You know what I mean? And I never looked at myself that way. I'm like, I pulled myself up from, nothing to what I have now. What I've accomplished is great relationships, a great career. I'm married. I own my own home. I have a vehicle. I have money. If I need to go and get a pair of shoes because mine broke, I have the luxury of having money in the bank to do that, which before, I couldn't scrounge 2 cents together. You know what I mean? So I may not have all my wants, but I absolutely have my needs met. And I could not have done it without going through what I went through. I think what I've been through has made me the woman I am today, and I wouldn't change me now for nothing.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word, Learn from People Who Lived It.